The only thing that matters is your ability to produce your next adaptation. If you don't understand the math and you're just showing up in your training, then you're working against yourself. To quantify that so that you're not training like a dummy, you should be using an X and a Y variable. Quality and quantity. The reps, which so many of you love to push, needs to be understood relative to the first primary variable. Okay, so for some of you guys that just like to add reps all the time, you're going to actually get to a point where that's no longer going to work, and let me start to build out an argument for that. If I were to draw a point, and that point represents our X variable, X progresses into its Y as you're performing a set, as you add on reps, so on and so forth, forever. But again, this Y that we are talking about has to be relative to the X, right? The quality and the quantity. Some of you have been taught incorrectly that there is a rep continuum where if you take reps starting at 1 and you do, let's say this would be 20 plus, people will tell you that 1 to 5 would be a strength adaptation, and then if you're doing roughly like 5 to let's say like 12, they'll label that as hypertrophy and then endurance, right? So they'll say strength hypertrophy, meaning muscle growth, and then endurance over here. But what does that do? That whole thing is a construct. You can grow muscle even if you go down into the strength, quote unquote, rep ranges. And the same could be said for endurance. However, the problem becomes what you're able to recover from. Most people have an easier time recovering from less repetitions. So every time you add sets and then you push more and more repetitions, again, the body has to recover more from that, especially if the stimulus is sufficient and you're pushing your sets like you should. Right now, so get rid of this mentality. Instead, right, understand that it is your 1 rep max, this number, that is the most correlated with the hypertrophy and not the endurance number. Why is that again? Because as we just went over, the X has to be relative to the Y. So even if you're able to push an insane number of repetitions, that's great, but again, it's relative to the weight. So if you're able to push more weight for more repetitions, I think we all can agree, you're going to get more of a adaptation. We're going to do things numerically. Let's use X, and we're going to reference it with our Y variable, and we're going to get a total of some sort, right? So let's take our example to simplify the math for now over 1 set. This person is doing 100 pounds for a set of 5 repetitions, and this is a PR for them. So that's what they're doing during 1 session. Now let's go ahead and add weight, right? So let's push the quality of what we're doing. So if we do 105 and repeat the stimulus, 5 reps, right? So times the same thing, then we're going to get an increment of plus 25 for every 5 pounds that we add. So then our new total is going to be 525. From an adaptation standpoint, guys, this is going to be easier to recover from because it's only 25 pounds more of a stressor. Whereas if you're doing 100 pounds and add a rep, you're dealing with 600. This could be good if you're able to recover from it. But let's say you're showing up to your workout, you're going for 7 and then you miss it. What did you do? You repeated the stimulus. You literally just repeated that 600 number on paper. But the whole point is that you want to keep things and break them down into a manageable increment that you can continue to progress by over time. Because we also know that sets of 5 are going to load the body slightly different than sets of 6. And so for consistency's sake, do 100 pounds for 5, let's say, then you go to 105. Then if you're successful, right, what do you think you guys are going to do? It's easy. You go to 110. Right, 110 for 5. Then you're going to do 115 for 5. Right? Then you're going to do 120 for 5. So on and so forth. Let me give you another example with heavier numbers. Let's say you can squat a decent amount of weight, right? You're pushing 400 pounds for a set of 5. That gives you your 2,000 pound total. Now let's push the repetitions. If you do the 6th rep, how many people out there can already squat 400 pounds just for 1 rep? Now you want to add on 1 other rep to a previous PR of 5. You have to produce 400 pounds of force. Again, that might not happen. You may show up for weeks or months of attempting 400 pounds and failing, still matching that 2,000 pound total. Incrementally push it, again, relative to the quality. You go up 5 pounds, match the reps. Now, it's a plus 25. Regardless of whether it was 100 pounds or 400 pounds, by adding on weight, like 5 pounds, for example, right, you give yourself more of a stressor, but it is more of a manageable stressor, especially from the perspective of recovery. When training intelligently, you create an inroad, which is a stressor, right? Do you see how that is easier for your nervous system and everything else to then recover from? Whereas if you're doing down here, 100 pounds, 400 pounds, whatever it is, relatively, you're creating more of an inroad, which the body has to recover from more to get the next adaptation. So hopefully this makes more sense mathematically why we want to push the quality of what we're doing at an appropriate interval. If you're adding on reps, sets, exercises, and you create so much of an inroad that the body can't recover, especially before your next session, then you're going to inhibit your ability to produce the desired adaptation. Follow the math. Do the stimulus or manage the stress required to get to the next adaptation and adjust the program from there.